What's going on, Workforce? Brian here, and we've got to talk more about Final Fantasy XVI, the potential for Final Fantasy XVII. As Yoshi-P clarifies, they're already working on the follow-up project for Final Fantasy XIV, set to hit next-generation consoles, according to some translations. We're going to cover that here right at the first. But before that, I do want to say thank you, Randy, for hooking me up with letting me borrow your PlayStation 4 Pro. I guess you know what that means, Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's going to be in my very, very near future, pretty much once we're done editing this video. I bring that up because obviously a lot of rumor and speculation has been going on the last couple of days, especially since Square-Enix announced that they hired, I'm going to butcher the name, Ryota Suzuki as a AAA battle director for an upcoming game of theirs. And this has got a lot of people thinking maybe he's going to be the director of Final Fantasy XVI, and Yoshi-P does go on to clarify some of his comments. So let's go and look at those according here to dailystar.co.uk. Link, as always, in the description. Yoshi-P is quoted saying, "We have launched the new core project following Final Fantasy XIV, which is his 2016 project. We've been covering that here on the channel. They showed off some artwork. They've been staffing up for it. And they've begun the challenge for the next generation. A job ad for the production arm has stated this last year. The production has already completed its initial development, and it's completed the environment development, and is now moving into full-scale, large-scale development phase." I have long been saying that, especially when you look at 13 and 14, those were announced really closely. It really makes more sense to me personally that if he's working on another Final Fantasy game, that's going to be something that his division is, which is Final Fantasy XI, Final Fantasy XIV, Dragon Quest X. It's really that multiplayer arm of the whole Square-Enix Division 3. And I honestly think that if it is a game, and it is a Final Fantasy game, I think I was talking about this just a couple years ago, that it's going to be Final Fantasy XVII. That's the right number that I feel that could ultimately end up making sense. And Final Fantasy XVI could come out and be a single-player game. Final Fantasy XV came out in 2016. It's so crazy just to see how long ago that was. Just, it felt like yesterday. I personally enjoyed Final Fantasy XV. Like I said in my review, I really wish that it was one game. It was great that they brought in DLCs to kind of round it out. But ultimately, it was this experience that if you don't experience everything, it ends up not being a really full package. But if you do the whole thing, it is something really to easily get lost into. Anyway, all that being said, with Final Fantasy VII-R, with some of the comments that we covered in the community feedback, kind of basically talking about really wanting a turn-based kind of RPG, or essentially a command-based. We've got an interview here summarized by Siladonra. I'm probably butchering the name, but again, link will be in the description. We're going to cover it here because it kind of talks about the future, obviously more focused around action. What Suzuki here's role has been with Dragon's Dogma, with Monster Hunter World. Everything seems to be moving more and more into that action RPG kind of arena, so to speak, and assuming that this is obviously related to Final Fantasy XVI. Here's the thing, or at least here's the first thought that I have about it, and then I'm going to cover the information for you guys, is if he was brought on 2019 to work on 16, that's still going to put the game out a while away. If he was brought on to work on battle content and stuff like that, that could be more in line with what Yoshi-P's working on, with what we've called Final Fantasy XVI for a lack of a Final Fantasy XVI announcement, but with Yoshi-P doing the environment, doing the game, targeting next generation, at least according to those quotes, which would make sense at this point. Just from a development perspective with Square-Enix, even with the single-player Final Fantasies, there has always been that push to really kind of put it onto new hardware, make it something that they couldn't do otherwise. Anyway, that very well could be, a follow-up to that. Now, based off of those comments, based off of the artwork, based off all that, it looks like it could be a whole new game, a whole new MMORPG. But all that right now is assuming a lot based off of just, Yoshi-P, his division, what they've been putting out, and more. But those are my thoughts. I just kind of wanted to summarize those at the top of the show, namely because of some comments that I've seen that I don't know if they watched the videos. It didn't seem like they did, so I just wanted to clarify that here because I'm pretty sure that if they see this video, they might come in and say, oh, that's what Yoshi-P actually said. Anyway, let's dive in. Square Enix is developing an action game with Dragon's Dogma lead Ryota Suzuki. This is again coming from Sildonra. Square-Enix is staffing up for a new development action game project, and one of their new recruits is none other than former Capcom developer Ryota Suzuki. This info was revealed on a recruitment PR page for Square-Enix, which emphasized the company's search for developers with skills and expertise in AAA titles, as well as in action scene and battle part design. That being the case, Suzuki's resume fits the bill, as he served at Capcom as the gameplay player for lead on Dragon's Dogma, game design lead on Dragon's Dogma Dark Arcean, and as the designer on Devil May Cry 5. He also helped with programming for Monster Hunter World and its Iceborne expansion. Really well received. And honestly, yeah, that sounds like the right guy that I want working at Square. The PR page also includes a brief interview with Suzuki, who revealed that he joined Square Enix in 2019 as the battle director for a new AAA title. The interview didn't focus too much on the game, and the page's purpose was to draw in potential applicants rather than tease details. But it did shed some insight on Square Enix motivations and structure when asked about the timing of the search of this experienced action game developers. Suzuki noted that Square Enix is best known for RPGs and command-based battle systems, but with the increase in hardware capacities over the last few generations, and even more and more RPGs have incorporated action elements, making the tools and talent to develop those types of systems in-house is increasingly necessary. To continue on the topic of the current trends, Suzuki noted that command battle games are often thought as old style and even marked out overseas by players with the JRPG label. Guilty. He suggests longer players raised on Grand Theft Auto, or younger players, raised on Grand Theft Auto, the first-person shooter may not, or a first-person shooter may not live up with more than static methods of command sections during battle. Square Enix's long history making more stat-based RPGs and Suzuki's own experience with action RPGs, referring to Dragon's Dogma, would enable the company to establish a capacity to create high-end RPGs with world-class action elements. And so, just as an aside here, the Pokemon as a part of a game is a great RPG, especially that command-based, old-school-based RPG that really is able to invite a lot of young players, my family included, into that kind of style. So I don't know. If they made an action RPG out of Pokemon, would I play it? Absolutely. So I don't know. I really would be curious as to your thoughts, especially on this mindset, with younger gamers coming up, wanting more of that action RPG in their life. I'm a fan of action RPGs, and I think with Bravely Default and other kind of games that they've been making, Octopath Traveler, there is still kind of that feeding of that tactical, that strategy, turn-based battle system. But anyway, they continued. The interview then pivoted to what was like to work at Square Enix. Suzuki praised the company's white company characteristics. Basically, a black company in this case is a term in Japan that companies with culture of excessive crunch, as well as reputation for worker exploitation, is labeled. So this is a very healthy thing, or at least somewhat healthier in that regard, as well as the support for its workers, the daily and monthly working hour limits, and office rest and lounge spaces. He acknowledged that due to the nature of the game's development, there is no surefire way of avoiding at least some cases of workers working long hours. The physical and mental health supports Square Enix provides was, in his view, generous. Suzuki also revealed a little more about the company structure and the career support, and he said that in most creative companies, getting results as a creator from being promoted often comes with additional management and organizational work done off-site. At Square Enix, he said, specialized project management and production assistance is on hand to help creatives tackle their management duties without losing focus on surmounting development challenges. He praised a work culture that makes it easy for people with initiative to consult with superiors and didn't overemphasize seniority when deciding which pitches the projects to entertain. So the interview closes with a message from Suzuki to potential Square Enix applicants. Aim for the top in both RPG and action, and future updates will be included. So it looks like Square Enix is doing this as a way of recruiting new talent into their pool, and it's great to see that they're bringing in top tier talent, also again from other companies. I've never actually played Dragon's Dogma, but I did really enjoy Monster Hunter World for the time that I spent with it, and I really do obviously like action RPGs. I think Final Fantasy XV, and when I sit down and play 7R, I'm really excited to kind of go hands-on with it. It's interesting. What's going to be really cool is to see is that I've seen a lot of comments regarding 7R, its ending or how it plays, etc., with mixed responses. And there was no way around it. If somebody was expecting the visuals and then obviously what 7 was turn-based wise, I would have loved to see a version of that. But at the end of the day, like, they're kind of in a rock and a hard place. I was like, when they announced it, I was like, yeah, it's going to take a while. But also at the same time, like, that it's so beloved and people have had such expectations for it. It's going to be a tough sell. Don't know why my voice is cracking up in that regard. So anyway, I'm gonna go hands on with that. So Final Fantasy 16 might not obviously be directed by Yoshi-P. I think obviously he's over a specific board that kind of approves Final Fantasy-esque stuff with it. But the fact is that this does kind of lead me to believe that 16 is going to be single player. 16 is hopefully already well under development. However, obviously he could be on board working on 16. When they announced 14, it was really close with 13 as well. So it was like 13, oh my gosh, and then 14. So 13 was obviously much closer to being released at the time, and 14 came out later. There was a point where I was like, is 14 coming out before 13? Like, this is nuts. So Yoshi-P continues to affirm, in this case, like, if you're going to take anything from the information that we just shared, that they're working on a new follow-up MMORPG to Final Fantasy XIV. That's how I read and interpret his words. That's how I read what he's talked about with his 2016 project. And when I say the 2016 project, we don't have a label. We've been labeling it 16 because we don't really have anything else yet to say what it is. But it very well could come in that 16 is its own game, and then maybe 17 is whatever Yoshi-P is developing back in 2016. That would ultimately, if you kind of put a timeline on it, kind of an estimated timeline, if you got 6.0 next year, and ultimately, when I was talking with Chris about this, with the numbers, like, you think that if they're going to continue to support 14 with expansions, it would be really cool to have that off year where you have like 17, the expansion is in the off year from 14, so you end up having every year there's a big release, whether it's 14, whether it's 17, and more. Regardless, I can't wait to figure out whatever they're announcing. Maybe it'll be here in the next couple of weeks. Crossing my fingers. PS5 event on Thursday, so we could see some Square-Enix news. Regardless, if there is the case, I'll be sure to hopefully not cry too much into the camera when talking about it with you guys. Let me know what you think. Any and all comments below, welcome. Love to see what you're thinking, what you're feeling. I love your faces. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. This video is sponsored by me. If you guys like podcast and long form content, I hope you check out Ginger Gaming Radio. Link will be in the description of this video below. So if you're still watching this video, thank you, and check out the new channel for more content, and hopefully you enjoy. Thank you.